What is the lowest level you can beat Pokemon Red and Blue using a Pinsir? We are on to Lorelei. If I recall correctly, we started level 38 because that's the first level we are going to outspeed the Dugong. And we are lucky enough to learn Swords Dance, and we do have that great attack. So I figure if we can get strong enough, along with some other moves like Hyper Beam, we might be able to sweep. But I think we should take a minute here and just talk about the move pool that Pinsir has. Now, it does have Swords Dance, Hyper Beam, Guillotine, which are some great moves and a great attack stat. However, what it can learn is pretty thin. And the typing, there's very little coverage on the typing. And as you know, we do have a ghost type gym leader that we do have to deal with here. And so I wanted to throw that first clip in here because I show all my successes, and I feel like sometimes I might make it look easier than it is, but it's very rare that I get past an Elite Four member on the first run. Most of the time it takes me 20 tries. Unless, of course, you're Golem and you got over-leveled on the first Elite Four member. So now we're going to go into Lorelei, and basically we don't want to get critical hit, and we don't really want to see an Aurora Beam because our special is very bad. But we are going to go for that Swords Dance trick here. So we get a takedown, we get a miss. So as you can see, we got lucky, so we're going for another Swords Dance here, and we get a Growl, which is fine, We'll take that. So then we have a takedown, but we are badge boosted. It was a critical hit, which is not ideal. But we're going to go ahead and use Hyper Beam here. We get a critical hit. Now, something to note is critical hits in Gen 1 ignore all stat modification. So a critical hit for me is actually a negative. But as you can see, the luck, we got a rest, and we're going to go ahead and I use Seismic Toss here. The only reason being was because if I got a critical hit again, I wanted to be able to knock it out, and I had the time. I wasn't in a rush because I knew that the Dugong was going to have to take a turn to wake up. And then I go for Guillotine here because Cloyster has very high defense. I'm not sure that I would have knocked it out at this low of a level. I get lucky with the first shot Guillotine. And then I'm going to go for Hyper Beam. And something to note with Hyper Beam is in Gen 1, if you knock the Pokemon out, you don't need to recharge. So we're definitely going to abuse that in this run here. Jinx has abysmal defense, so I'm pretty sure even if we got a critical hit, we'd still knock out the Jinx. Hyper Beam, I believe, is 90% accurate, so there is a chance we miss these, but we're doing pretty good on hitting them. Lapras, we're going to go ahead and Hyper Beam, and we have all the Swords Dance, so we're good to go. So that's Lorelei. So the question I ask you is, what's the lowest level you can beat Pokemon Red and Blue using a Pinsir? We are on to Bruno. So a little plot twist here is we're actually going to use Swords Dance. And I think in almost every other run we mimic Harden and just skate through Bruno. But this is kind of fun. We're going to use a different strategy here. The only move that Bruno can do damage to us with is either Rock Throw or Slam, and both of which aren't that terrible. But Onix is going to let us set up. We are getting our badge boost here, which is pretty nice. In case you forget, there's 4 of the 8 gym leaders that when you beat them, they will raise your stat. And for whatever reason in Gen 1, when your stat is modified, you get those boosted stats again, which is about 12.5%. So every time your stats are modified, good or bad, all your stats are going to be boosted, assuming you have all 8 badges. Once we get the Onix down, we're going to go ahead and just Hyper Beam Hitmonchan because we are super tough now with all of our Swords Dances. Hitmonlee is going to do an X Defend, which, could have been a good strategy, honestly, but didn't work out for him. Onix again. So Onix again, it just knows some pretty terrible moves. If it gets locked into Rage, Rage is probably the worst move in the game. But it's going to go for Harden quite a bit, which doesn't affect us because Seismic Toss is just going to do 40 damage every single time, no matter what. So we're just going to keep going ahead and going for Seismic Toss, take care of the Onix. And then we are going to Hyper Beam the Machamp here. I think I went for a Seismic Toss just because there's nothing it could have done to knock me out, and I didn't want to put it in healing range. So I just went for 1 here in case I got a critical hit, or maybe I went for 2 in case I got a critical hit, just because I was good to go. There wasn't a whole lot the Machamp could do to me. So now this will for sure be a knockout. And there we go. There's a critical hit. That's what we were worried about. So I'm glad we did that. There's Bruno. So the question I ask you is, what is the lowest level you can beat Pokemon Red and Blue using a Pinsir? We are on to Agatha. So pretty big bummer here that we had to go from level 40 on Bruno to level 58 on Agatha. But the main reason is there's only really one move that I see that we can use that'll do anything against Agatha, and that's Seismic Toss. Seismic Toss is going to do damage based on your level. So I'm level 58, so it's doing 58 damage per. The other thing that level 58 does for us is it helps us outspeed things like the Gengar, the Haunter, these things that are an actual threat. Because if you look at Agatha, what Agatha is, it's just luck. What's going to happen, what move she uses, it's just all luck. And every time we outspeed one of her Pokemon, every time it goes from a 4-hit KO to a 3-hit KO, it just makes our chances of winning just slightly better. Could you beat Agatha at level 40? I think you could. If you got really lucky and you had the time to sit here and try to beat her to level 40, absolutely. But what we need to think about is, okay, so then we have Lance next. Can we beat Lance at level 40? So there's really not a huge reason to rack your head against the wall to try to brute force through here at level 40 just to have to level up against Lance. So level 58, we are outspeeding. We turn things, I think the Haunter even turns into a 2-hit KO. The Gengar's a 3-hit KO. I did use Guillotine there because I was just kind of curious if it would work. I wasn't sure that it would or wouldn't. So go ahead, we go Seismic Toss, we get hit with the Confuse Ray. Honestly, it's not looking great for me right here. And I think these are one of those runs where sometimes I reset, but sometimes I was just doing a little scouting to see what would happen. I wanted to see how much damage I would do to the Arbok, to see if I needed to level up anymore. So basically after this, I was contemplating restarting, but I was like, I knocked it out, let's go for it. So then we're up against the Gengar. Even if you make it to here, if it gets 2 Nightshades off on you, it's pretty rough. So we go for Seismic Toss. It does Dream Eater. I go Seismic Toss again. And then it goes Dream Eater, and then we do outspeed. So there we go. That's Agatha. Lucky, lucky, lucky. So the question I ask you is, what is the lowest level you can beat Pokemon Red and Blue using a Pinsir? We are on to Lance. So even though we went up quite a bit in levels, Lance is still pretty scary. Compared to Lance's Pokemon, we're not that over leveled. So what we need to do here is we need to use Sword Stance. We can survive a couple hits from Gyarados. And I did use a rare candy right after Agatha, so I wouldn't level up. Because if we don't outspeed the Aerodactyl, things typically don't go very well. So I'm going to go ahead and just get all the way up on my Sword Stance, because that's really the only way things are going to work in our favor here. And then we're going to just go ahead and use the Hyper Beam. It kind of has a weird mechanic in this where if you knock out the Pokemon, you don't have to recharge. So Hyper Beam's a physical attacking move, and we have very high attack as our base stat, and we've just boosted it up 3 times with Sword Stance, so we're looking pretty good. And we are faster than most things with our badge boost intact here, and we're not at risk for leveling up. So we're going to go ahead and hit Hyper Beam. I believe it's about 90% accurate, so there is a chance that we miss, but we did get pretty lucky on the Gyarados, so I think we do tank a couple things, so we can get hit by a move or two, and we're not too concerned. I did use a PP up on Hyper Beam. I think there's about 3 of them in the game that you can get. I did just use one of them on Hyper Beam just to give me a little extra leeway in case I miss. And then the Aerodactyl here, even though it is a rock type and normal does not fare well against rock, we're going to go ahead and shoot for Hyper Beam anyway, because submission, it's not going to do a whole lot to it. And it's not very effective, but it's enough to take it out with all that boosting that we got. And then we have Dragonite, and again we're going to go for the same thing, Hyper Beam. And that's it. If you can get the Sword Dance off, it's pretty smooth. But getting the Sword Dance off is easier said than done. So that's Lance for you. So we just got blue left. So the question I ask you is, what is the lowest level you can beat Pokemon Red and Blue using a Pinsir? We are on to blue. Okay, so on the Pidgeot, we do not want to see Wing Attack. Mirror Move, Sky Attack, Whirlwind are all fine. But if you see Wing Attack, it really sets you up in a poor spot here. So we're going to go ahead and get one Sword Stance off, and we're going to say, all right, we just want to get this Pidgeot out of here. So we go for Hyper Beam. Don't want to see a miss, because if we would have used a Sword Stance Wing Attack, probably would have been over. But we got lucky, went for Sky Attack, so we get another opportunity here. If we would have missed there, it wouldn't have looked good either. So we get the Pidgeot out. Next out is Alakazam. Do not want to mess around with that. So we're going to go ahead and Hyper Beam right away. We do outspeed, which is sweet. So we go ahead and take out the Alakazam. Even though we are bug type, our special is so bad, we just don't want to mess with it. Now, Rhydon is pretty bad. If you look at its moves, Leer, Tail Whip, not ideal, but really not a huge deal. Horn Drill doesn't even work because in Gen 1, Horn Drill, one hit KO moves are tied on your base speed. So if your base speed is less than the other Pokemon, the one hit KO move won't even work. And PP management is super huge in this. We get pretty skinny towards the end with how much PP we have because Guillotine and Hyper Beam only have 5. Well, my Hyper Beam has 6 because I use the PP up. But anyway, since the Rhydon isn't such a challenge, we're just going to go ahead and Seismic Toss it out just to preserve our PP. PP and EXP management in these runs is crucial. It's something I might not talk about enough, but knowing when you're going to level up for the badge boost and knowing what moves you need to use your PP ups for, because there's only 3 in the game, so you got to use them pretty sparingly. So then I'm going to go ahead and Hyper Beam this Arcanine. Not too big of a deal there because we did use all those Swords Dance. And then we have Executor. Now, Executor is kind of a pain because it can put you to sleep. So I go for Hyper Beam right away. But I miss. I want to save that last one for the Blastoise, so I'm going to go for Guillotine here. Really don't want to be put asleep. I could have saved the Guillotine for the Blastoise, but Blastoise has special moves with Hydro Pump and Blizzard, and our special is really bad. So I would rather take the risk trying to hit the Executor, because Guillotine's only 30% accurate, than try to risk using it on the Blastoise here. So we're not getting too lucky, but it's a 30 accurate move. So what can you expect? And then we get so lucky. I mean, how great was that? One hit KO, knock it out with 11 HP left. We should be faster than Blastoise. We've got one Hyper Beam left. It doesn't miss. And is it going to knock it out? It does. Critical hit, so whatever. Sword Stance doesn't even matter for that. Level 61, that's a world record, baby. So the question I ask you is,